today we have a very special guest, so none other than Dr. Nicolas Grimaldi of One Osteo. Very interesting guy with a very interesting topic. I have very good experiences with what osteopathy has done for me, and especially Nicolas Grimaldi's magical hands.
Thank you, Gina. Thanks for inviting me tonight. We're going to try to do a quick presentation on what osteopathy is and how we intervene with newborn and babies, and to explain the different causes of trauma, of birth trauma, and the symptoms that we can associate with it. So basically, I'm just going to do a quick introduction on what is osteopathy. So trauma in childbirth is a medical concept that is not extremely accurate to our point of view. In osteopathy, we look at it from a very different point of view, and we will explain you why. So osteopathy is quite prominent in the world. We have 20+ million treatments every year in France, for example. In Australia, it's growing widely. There are colleges in, I think, 19 or 20 countries now. So it's one of the main alternative therapies in the Western world, actually. So this is what we do on adults. Okay, so we're going to explain what is birth trauma from a medical point of view, and you will see that the causes are exactly the same, but the interpretation of what a trauma is from the osteopathic point of view is very different. So basically, a birth trauma from a medical definition point of view is a process leading to a birth injury. So what the medical system sees, it's the injury, and the trauma is the process leading to that injury. So whether it's an hematoma, whether it's a bruise, a fracture, etc. So the reasons are the same that we find. So basically, some differences in the proportions of the pelvis, which I more or less agree with. We're going to see why. It's a vast subject as well. Fast and short deliveries. We're going to explain the mechanical processes behind that. C-section. We're going to explain why. Birth positions as well, which again, I don't really agree with, because it's another subject about the practice in medicine on how to deliver certain positions. And today, we don't have many doctors left with that particular knowledge. So the bridges and transversal babies are not delivered naturally anymore nowadays. The forceps vacuum, this is a very big point for us, because 80% of the troubles, for example, on the immune system, will be due to forceps and vacuum. In the history, we will find that these babies were born with vacuum and forceps. So the management, what the doctors will do. So basically here we see a very typical picture of forceps traces on the face of a baby, and basically there's nothing to be done in medicine. We will explain what are the implications and consequences of such marks on the face. So how we look at it is, we have a non-traumatic birth and a medical birth trauma. But what's in between? How can we explain that we go from a non-traumatic birth to a medical trauma? Are there steps in between, different levels, different gravities, maybe certain things that we don't see or we can't see, but still there is an impact on the baby's skull in general, or the body, but it's mainly the skull, as it is the biggest volume going through the birth canal. So what is a birth trauma from an osteopathic point of view? So our structures, our body, falls under the laws of mechanics and physics, which is applied to a biological system, which is applied to what we call a biological machine. So it's a machine like a car, like a computer. So you have mechanical laws, you have physical laws, you have certain structures that are meant to move in a certain way to establish a certain function. If the structures are not proper in terms of shape and in terms of movement, then it will affect the movement, thus the function. The particular element which we have is that machine is controlled by an electrical system, which is our nervous system. So if we disturb the machine in its structures, in the shape of these structures or the movement of these structures, potentially we will affect the nervous system, thus certain functions, and we will see the different details related to a newborn and kids later on. So we have a rule in osteopathy, and it's a rule of physics. It's life is motion. So that's exactly what I explained. To ensure life, to ensure the survival of the structure of that machine, it has to be as perfect as possible in terms of the ability to render some movements. And we see, I like this picture because if you think of a Swiss watch, it's hundreds of different pieces which have a very particular shape, a very particular placement, and a very particular movement to ensure that everything is coordinated perfectly. If you disturb one piece in its shape or in its movement, potentially you will disturb the entire structure, the entire watch in that case, for that example. So it's the same thing that happens with the body. So I like that image as well because this is an example that I give to my patients frequently. So you have to imagine that there's a little sprout coming out from the ground, supposedly straight. So what happens if that little sprout is blocked by a rock? The sprout is meant to grow. Yet, in the environment, there is a constraint. And due to that constraint, the rock, the tree will have no choice, the little sprout will have no choice but to grow bended. If the gardener doesn't come at this stage, which is what we can assimilate to birth, if the gardener doesn't come and removes the rock at this stage, then you come back in 20 years, your little sprout that was supposed to give a straight tree would be bended. And these are the mechanisms of scoliosis. That's very important to understand because 80% of the scoliosis are said idiopathic. Idiopathic is just a term to say we don't know where it comes from. And I can tell you, most of the time in these 80% of idiopathic scoliosis, it's due to birth, the constraints during birth. So I'm going to explain, I'm going to take another example and to explain how the structures of the body work. And you have the bone is a material. Bones are a material, like a piece of wood, like a piece of metal, like a piece of paper. Everything on earth is a material. And these material on earth, they have two particular properties. One is density. The denser you are, the less flexible you are. The second is flexibility. The more flexible, the less dense. This is a basic rule of physics. So the question is, how does a said material would behave facing a strength, a constraint, a force applied on it? So it's very simple, and we will explain the three different steps of birth and the three different steps of traumatic birth, non-traumatic birth, traumatic birth, and beyond, which is fracture, the rupture. So you take this piece of paper, which is a material with a certain flexibility. If you impose a constraint, a force on it, then it will deform. If that force stays within the range of what that structure, that material can absorb, then you release and it goes back to its initial shape. So this is what we call the range of deformability. Basically, when the baby's skull goes through the birth canal, it receives a certain amount of constraints due to the pressures exerted by the contractions of the uterus inside the birth canal, the pelvis of the mother, which is a natural process. However, these constraints, these forces, they have to stay within the range of what that structure, that material can absorb when it goes out to go back to its initial shape. This is a non-traumatic birth. So the second range is what we call the range of deformation, and you will quickly understand. The piece of paper is here. Sorry, I don't see my screen. Okay, so basically you're going to impose a force which goes beyond what the material can accept. And when you release the force, the constraint, it doesn't go back to its initial shape. Whatever you do, there is a print. There is a real deformation of the system. This is the range of deformation. And this is what happens during when they use forceps vacuum. The pressures will go beyond what the material, the bones, can absorb. Thus, you will be left with a strain, and the baby will grow around that, will grow with this. And this is where you're going to find flatheads, torticollis, for example, which are some of the biggest expressions of these constraints, because the skull couldn't go back to its initial shape. It's not exactly initial because there are changes in the structure, but what is meant to be the freest setting. Okay, so basically, due to the constraints of strain within the skull, well, like I showed with the little sprout, the baby will grow around it. And unfortunately, you may not see that at birth. And the flathead will start to appear within the first 3 months. But it's already too late. It's too late in that sense that it's already into the deformation. The deformation has been installed. And it's going to take a lot more time for us to reverse that, rather than seeing the baby straight after birth, then whatever trauma that has been received by the body, we can reverse it before the skull starts to grow. you have to remember that the skull of a baby will grow on average during the first 6 months, before the first 6 months, of more than 30%. I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of mothers here. You remember the size of the skull of your baby at birth and what it was at 3 months or 6 months. So you imagine the forces of growth that have been applied on that structure. And if it's not perfectly free, then it will grow bended or flat or whatever. So this is very important to understand. The third range is basically, if you go beyond what the structure can absorb, you break, okay? So, which is unfortunately what happens sometimes with forceps or vacuum or some difficult birth, where they have to extract the baby. There's a fracture of the skull, there's a fracture of the collarbone, a stretch of the nerves of the neck, so the brachial plexus, etc., etc. So the only difference that exists between material, non-living material, and our bones, it's the fact that it's a living material. That aspect is the signature of life. Is basically the ability of that particular structure to repair on its own. So if you break a bone, your bone will repair. Okay, so we have a certain vital system, a certain inner strength that allows the system to repair. Yet, it doesn't stop it from being out of balance. Okay, so this is just a little image to correlate what I just said. On the long run, is we can see this tree in a savanna, which is very windy. The tree had to adapt, and it has deformed based on the direction of the wind. This is exactly what happens with scoliosis. And scoliosis starts at birth most of the time, unless there is a fall, big fall at when the baby, when the child is very young, or a fracture, etc., that might again disturb these mechanisms, and we will see what are the causes of imbalances beyond birth. So we have we're going to skip on this one because it's out of the topic for now. So the mechanical imbalances that will lead to the causes that will lead to mechanical imbalances, forceps vacuum, 100% of the time. 100% of the time. I repeat it, it's systematic because the forces that they use are too important. They will go beyond the limit of what the skull can absorb. Surgeries, fractures, twins. Interesting. Why? Because there's always one twin which will compress the other one, and usually the one that is underneath will tend to have a flat head. Very, very common. C-sections. Okay, we're going to do a little explanation on that particular topic because it's a surgery that is very frequent. It's a surgery that is considered as non-impactful, and I fundamentally disagree. For the mother and for the baby. We were, at least women, not me, but women were not meant to deliver in a different way than the vaginal way. That's how it is. Nature has prepared everything for us. And you have to understand that a delivery is not just pushing out the baby on the exit and yeah, let's go. No, it's a process. It's a process on multiple levels. It's a process on the colonization of the different bacteria that you have in the vagina that will be absorbed by the baby as first exposure to bacteria, fungus, viruses, which we need for our gut, which we need for our skin. So there will be, and that's why you have this film, this pellicle on the skin of the baby at the beginning, is to protect and to allow the colonization. This is one of the important aspects. The other aspect is also the fact that with the contractions, the lungs will be emptied with whatever water that is in the mouth and the respiratory tract. There is also remodeling of the skull. The remodeling of the skull happens in two different stages. First stage is the occiput, so this bone, when it goes through the birth canal, it will be compressed in different ways to unfold. And the fact that it unfolds, it will change the angle of the occiput. So this bone with the first vertebra here, there will be a shift. Second element, when the baby's head is out, just under the pubic bone, the child will do this, specifically stimulating the muscles of the neck. It's the first stimulation to wire the muscles to move in a certain direction. And if you are behind your screen now, you can do it. You curve your neck like this and you will feel that your back, your lower back is curving at the same time. This is to inform the body, to inform the nervous system that the neck has the ability to move, to bend like this, and the lower back as well. Why? Because the baby is meant from the first second after birth to crawl to the nipple. It's a survival skill. If you were born through C-section, there will be no remodeling of the skull. There will be no change of that angle with the first cervical. There will be no stimulation of the neck muscles. There will be no stimulation of the lumbar muscle, which are a setting, the first setting for them. And what you will see is that these babies, these C-section babies, they're very nice, they're very round, but they are not very functional. They don't move much. You put them on their tummy, they can't lift their head because their lower back is still blocked in a curvy fetal position and can't unfold. So they have difficulties to lift their head. These, I would say, setting defects, because they don't have imbalances as per se, but will lead to imbalances. And these kids, they will have colic problems very often. And you will see nearly always, these babies, they will keep their feet bended on their stomachs. They can't stretch their legs because their lumbar spine is blocked. That's very important. So I would tend to advocate against C-section unless it's a fatal risk. Yet I know doctors around the world who never practice C-section because they have the techniques to extract the baby, to go and take the baby. Unfortunately, all this knowledge has been lost for most of them nowadays. So this is very important to understand. The different issues that we will find for babies which are linked with mechanical imbalances. So, as I said, flat head, torticollis, vomiting. If you have big imbalances here, just there you have the vagus nerve passing by, which is the one innervating the stomach. If this is blocked or pinched, then the nerve will be irritated. They will tend to vomit each time they eat. Very common. Colic, as I explained, with the lumbar spine, for example, reflux, constipation, breastfeeding disorders, difficulty latching. Most of the time, it's linked with some mechanical disorders. I know there's a big debate with tongue tie, as we discussed with Gina about it. Tongue ties are pretty rare. And it's, to me, I've seen quite a number of babies, even though they have what they call a tongue tie, it's not necessarily a reason why they can latch. I've seen babies which have had the surgery and still they can't latch because there were mechanical imbalances. We released the mechanical imbalances and it's better. What I usually advise is, if there is a diagnosis of tongue tie, we don't know if it's right or not, and I would go first to release the structure and see if once we release fully the structure, it's enough to breastfeed properly. And most of the time, from my experience, it's enough. What is important to understand is that these imbalances at this stage will lead to certain symptoms that we just talked about. So breastfeeding disorders, you would see some babies, they have difficulties gripping, etc. And the baby keeps growing. So the vomiting will go away eventually, the colic will go away eventually, because of the maturity of the system, because of the system growing, etc., etc. Yet the imbalances that have led to these disorders will still be there. And today it causes reflux. Tomorrow it will lead the child to have asthma later on, or difficulty walking, or a lot of things. What is very important to understand is that we see 50% of our patients are kids or babies, and most, if not all, but most of the issues that we find with young kids or later on, or even adults, it comes from birth. It comes from birth, unless they had a fall, they had a fracture, an accident later on, which adds on to the system of imbalances. Club foot, very important. Taken very early, unless there is a shortening of the Achilles, we can reverse it in 1-2 sessions maximum, without surgery, without these shoes, etc., etc. It's very efficient because it's just deformation of the structures due to constraints in utero. Allergies, bronchitis, otitis, breathing disorders in general. We see a lot of skin problems as well, which are linked to those imbalances as well. Very frequently here, we would see that babies are a bit slow in their teeth development. One aspect is because they are not left enough on their stomach to develop their core, the strength, and the constraints of the muscle work will stimulate the growth of the bones, so the growth of the teeth. And also when we have big blockages on the first cervical, the first vertebra, nerves that control the teeth will be compressed, and the teeth will grow slower. We release the first cervical, the teeth grow again. Very fast, within 1 week, maximum a month, but most of the time within 1 week, they pop out. So the general causes of mechanical imbalances for everyone starts with birth trauma, as we explained it. Fractures in your life, surgery, epidural for women. Most of the women that we treat who have had epidural within 6 months to 5 years, they will develop some lower back pain. Accidents, car accident, whiplash, falls, sprains, sports injuries. So the body balance is the reflection of all the accumulated traumas that you had in your life. Like a tree would have prints when it grows, if it grows bended, the body has a similar memory. And the stronger the prints, the more difficult, the highest expression of that print and imbalances, again, is scoliosis. So that's what I just said. The body will grow around its imbalances. The body is a dynamic structure, even more during growth. You imagine that the baby was born at, let's say, 50 something centimeters, and it will grow within the 16, 20 years of life, the first 16, 20 years, to 160, 2 meters, whatever. These are huge, huge changes. If there's something disrupting that growth, it will disrupt the whole mechanic. It has a very strong ability to absorb mechanical constraints because of the signature of life, yet there are limits. And when I say it's extremely sensitive to mechanical changes, we see a lot of patients with imbalances on the pelvis, for example. Just 1 millimeter difference in the position of the pelvis will have tremendous impact and consequences on the rest of the system. So our work, like the doctor at birth would check the baby, the APGAR, if everything is right, 2 legs, two arms, hands, the shape, the ability to follow, the ability to whatever. We do the same from a mechanical point of view. This is why I insist so much on prevention, or at least early detection of these imbalances. Straight after birth, when I say straight after birth, it's the first few days. I know there is a cultural habit here, which is a confinement, and I see a lot of women coming after 30 days, 40 days or plus, and it's already too late because the baby has grown and it's going to require us a lot more time, a lot more work, so a lot more money as well. We have to consider that from that aspect to rebalance the system. If I see the baby straight after birth, first few days, 2, 3, we have many babies coming now, thanks to Gina also, and the breastfeeding group for all the work we've done all these years. Coming 2, 3 days old. It's fantastic to work at this age. We can reverse everything before the body grows around it and starts to print or deform the different structures. This presentation was meant for dentists, so I haven't had the time to change that. So here we go. This was the end of my presentation, and thank you very much. I hope you had a lot of information. Quickly, we've covered a lot of things. If you have questions, I'm here for that, for a little more time.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for a very good explanation in the short time that it is allocated to you. I'm sure
I tried my best.
Yeah, there's a lot more you can share. I know that you're holding back quite a bit because I keep telling you about the time, right? So hopefully with whatever information you have given, I do believe it's enough for a lot of parents to ask more questions and also to make the decision for their own unique situation, especially the babies are all different, all unique, to make an appointment to see you as soon as possible. And as what is mentioned, yes, we do have the practice of confinement here where we are not allowed to go out of the home for 30, 40 days. But mommy and daddy's question to you, if whatever Dr. Nick has shared with you, it does impact your baby in so many areas, not just in breastfeeding, there's just so many things that will impact the babies. It is it is necessary. I believe it's necessary to make an appointment with one osteo as soon as possible, immediately after birth, especially if you have a cesarean birth, if you have a birth that includes forceps or vacuum. Am I right, Nick?
I would
Yeah.
say in general, every single birth. I forgot, I passed very quickly on certain things, but the simple fact that a woman delivers flat on the back, legs up, it's already too much constraint. It's already a ground for imbalances, because if you're logical, if you want to bring a baby from up to down, if you deliver lying down, it's not going to work, and you will have to push to bring that baby out. And don't forget that a delivery is a mechanical process, and the delivery is meant for you, as during that process, to use your lumbar spine to help the baby, because you feel the baby going through your birth canal. The upper part of the pelvis will open, so the lower part will close. So you will have to use your lumbar spine. You will have to feel and open, use your sacrum to open the upper part, and then the baby going down, the upper part closes, the sacrum will change as well. It's a mechanical process. If you're lying down on your back, it's not going to work. It's a mistake. So just this is enough to produce too much constraint.
Just lying down on the back.
Yeah, the gynecologic position, it doesn't make sense. It's meant to facilitate doctors, not to facilitate birth. We work with doulas, we work with hypnobirthing people. What do they recommend? Sitting or being in a position, exactly, or squatting, because this is how it's meant to be. When I've been traveling around the world and seeing working with tribes, or traveling for other things with tribes, these people, they work in the field, and they are used to deliver like this. They are strong. We tend to be weaker as well. There are other components to take in account, but yet the position itself is extremely important. There is one detail that I forgot about when I talked about the different elements of birth, and why a vaginal birth is so important. The nervous system is not wired yet. It's yet to be structured. So when the baby goes through the birth canal, these different contractions of the uterus and through the vagina will initiate the how can I say that, the first settings of how your nervous system will perceive pain, will perceive touch. And if you go through a birth that is traumatic, a lot of violence, a lot of pain, your perception of what we call pain, but of pain, will be different than the one that was born in a nice and smooth way. C-section babies, they have no setting at all, because their skin hasn't had that lightening, I don't know how to call it, initiation of the nervous system. Very, very important.
I have 4 babies, and I was flat for all 4 of my babies. And listening to you, I understand why they are the way they are. Yeah. And is it too late to do something about that? I know that you say as soon as possible, and then that piece of paper where you just folded it, that means that it's the constraints or the force is already so great. So my children's issues, especially the one with scoliosis. Is it possible to correct it after that, after so many years?
I'm going to ask you the question back.
Yeah.
Did we make a change on your kid?
there was a
possible.
huge change. It was a huge change, from and you know that my girl has been seeing you since she was 14 years old. Today she's 20 years old. All right.
Exactly, and it took us 5 years
Yeah.
to get there. When as a baby it will take us few weeks, few months maximum at the beginning. It's always possible, because
Okay.
we will always be able to bring a change in the mechanic with whatever we have. Again, the body is a machine. It has to work. It has to adapt. We will just bring better adaptations and eventually changes. But I remember a case of a patient that I've seen for years. I think I've seen the child with a flat head, really, really strong flat head, around 3 years old or something like this. And I saw him one day. He was 7 years old or something like this. And I touched his head, I say hello, I touch his head like this. Suddenly I realized, oh, it took 4 years for the skull to remodel. Because by changing the setting of the balance, step by step, through growth, and that's the beauty of it, through growth, the system will change and eventually reshape. But it's going to take years, and we don't always know if where we're going to land, how long it's going to take. We are lucky to have patients who trust our work and come every year, every 6 months, when whatever advice that I give, okay, come back, I explain why and how they see the changes. And like you've brought your girl for years on a regular
Yes.
basis, every 6 months or every 3 months when she had pain, and we've managed to change her structure, and the scoliosis has changed, and she's much better today. Again, it took us a long time.
Yeah, it did. It was very frustrating initially. Yeah, for all those mothers who are wondering, yeah, it was actually initially very frustrating because I expected magic. Okay, yeah, it's just like that. But thank God that Dr. Nick is very patient with me, and not just him, but his team of osteopath, or else they take turns explaining certain things to me as well. And thank God that I'm a good listener, and I am a good obeyer. Is there such a word? I'm like, okay, it makes sense. And I understand that my daughter is already 14 years old. It took her so many years to become like that. I have to give it time. And yes, it took 5 years, 5 years to see. No, but it actually took less than a year to see a difference. Yeah, very.
The great changes lesser, but we saw
Yeah.
after what, 4 years, I think.
Yes, yes. The
Full
X-ray
change.
shows the X-ray shows the difference. Yeah,
Yeah.
but even in the very beginning, even after the first treatment, there was less complaint of pain. There was you can see the obvious difference in the shoulders, and that is why it has become a mission of mine to inform parents of very young babies, especially if you are pregnant. To look into this. I think it's so important. And there's this question, or rather a statement just from this mother in response to what you have shared just now. Mommy, try all fours, but the progress is too slow. And then the doctor suggested that I follow a normal lying down position.
Okay, so this is honestly a big debate, and the issue there is first the environment, the ecosystem in which you will deliver. First, the education that we have, the habits that we have, the education of the doctors, because what we see, for example, in Malaysia, and we see that more and more around the world, 38 weeks. They ring the bells. Oh, your baby is not out. It has to come out on that day. I mean, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. There's no clock saying that it has to be on that day. It has to be at 38 weeks. It can be 42. So there is a lot to reshape in the understanding on the care for delivery, etc. And interestingly, what was it, in 2018, the World Health Organization which is not an organization that I necessarily support, but they've done something good that time. They've released a guideline on the care for women, and to ask doctors to take in account their needs, their natural ways, etc., etc. So it's a big question. It's a big question, and there's we have to review the entire system to get to a place where a woman like you will be given the chances to deliver properly without the stress surrounding you. Because once you get into that room with all that light, people moving around you, you already start to release hormones that will block your contractions.
Right.
And then it's not fast enough. It's a complete mess very quickly, and it messes with your hormones, your stress, and the stress hormones will not provide the same contractions. So yeah, it's a vast subject.
It's true. So it can be so frustrating, and we hope that this knowledge, this awareness will reach the right doctors. All doctors should know about it, actually. We have questions here from Daphne. You have met her, right? After her baby? So she's asking, I think it's something that she would like all her students to know, okay? So ask directly from the horse's mouth so that you tell us, okay, when is the best time for an osteo visit while pregnant and after birth? So you mentioned after birth is immediately within the first few days, if possible, right?
Yeah,
And
the best.
Yes.
Okay, for the baby, as I'm going to repeat what I said. Bring your baby. We offer free checkup. Hopefully, other osteopaths have the same kind of policies, and we check the baby straight. First, second, third day, 5-day, doesn't matter. If there are constraints, if there are imbalances, we will tell you, explain you, show you. We treat the baby. If we send you back home, that's it. But at least we've checked and we have the certainty that the balance is good or not. For the mom.
Sorry, Nick. I think we lost you there for a little bit. That means if there is no issues, you send the parents and the baby back home, right? Is that what you said just now?
Yes. We check the baby. If there's work, we do the work. If there's no work, we send back the baby. We say, okay, your baby is perfect. No need for us to do a treatment, and we don't charge you for that. But at least we have the certainty. For the mom, what I usually advise, ideally, would be to see the mom before she's pregnant, because you may have had accidents, you may have imbalances, you may have had a fracture, you may have had a surgery, you may have had a fall, and you may have imbalances. To facilitate your pregnancy, to facilitate the labor as well from a mechanical point of view, the best is to prepare before. Then if you're pregnant, but you come whenever you can, you want, or when you have pain, basically, that's how we see people. But ideally, it would be as a preventive, we prepare the body before being pregnant, and it's perfect. After birth, unless the mother is really suffering, and in that case, we would see her quickly. I usually advise to wait 1 to 2 months because we're going to let the body reorganize itself. And once we see the mom after 1, 2, or sometimes 3 months, again, unless discomfort, pain, or whatever, we would have the picture of what the body has been able to do to reorganize everything. And in that case, we just add on a little bit of work to facilitate the reorganization of the structures whether it's the bone structures or the soft structures, the uterus in particular, because it's going to decrease. The different organs, they will go back to their space, diaphragm, etc. The different curves, they will readapt in a different way. I like to take my time for that. Again, if you come after 15 days, we will do it. If not, well, I mean, we'll see whenever.
Yeah. Can osteopathy help in terms of slip disc?
Yes, this is a very frequent ailment that we treat.
Yeah. It's quite a straightforward answer. Yes, yeah, it can help. But you do need to get help as soon as possible, right?
Yes, yeah. We will assess your case, send you for further medical check if we deem it necessary. In general, osteopaths would see people with all kinds of pains, discomfort, sports injuries, migraines, headaches, some digestive issues, infertility, some difficulty to conceive. In a lot of cases, it's due to some mechanical problems, and we've had quite a number of babies that we've helped conceive through the work we've done. Yeah, a lot of things.
Okay, there's another one about breech delivery to help with a breech positioned baby.
Yeah. Yes and no. I mean, there's no certainty. I say that because I've recently had a mom coming to see me like at 34, 36 weeks, asking me, even more than that. She was 1 week prior to the C-section plan for if the baby doesn't come out at 39 weeks. And I was like, look, I have no certainty. I will try my best to rebalance your body, to work on the baby, the uterus, give space for the baby, eventually do soft maneuvers to give direction for the baby. But this is something I will never say, yeah, come, we will do it. Sometimes it works, maybe it's us, maybe not. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes we see the mother too late because there are too much imbalances. Yeah, that's my answer.
All right, I appreciate that. It's you really have to get assessed first before you can tell you on screen online here that yeah, it will definitely works. No, it doesn't work. You know,
we can try. We try, and we do the best we can.
So each one has to be assessed personally. Yeah, you can't be assessed by what other people say, and you don't get assessed online just like this. Yeah, please make an appointment to get assessed. Okay, from Mommy Lillian here, she asks, may I know, is it a big problem when every time my girl who's 3 years old sitting down, her spine will curve? What can I do?
Okay, so this is not necessarily an issue in that sense that babies, they don't have yet a full, I mean, kids at 3 years old, they don't have all their curves. Everything is not functional. I mean, not functional is that formed like for adults, and when they don't necessarily have the muscle masses nor the muscle strength to hold their back nicely, curve in not curve. How do you say? I forgot the word.
The curvature of the spine?
Yeah, the lumbar spine, but in that way. So when they sit, they would tend, the back would tend to be roundish, nothing unusual.
Nothing unusual. when I was a kid, my parents used to poke me in the side whenever I slouch, and it's like slouch, and then I get a poke and I'll straighten up. Okay, but the slouching, I think, is more to a bad habit or to weaken muscles, isn't it?
It's in many cases we are talking here about kids that are older, and supposedly they can hold their back, etc. Very frequently we find imbalances which will disrupt the system, which we call basically architectural imbalances. And in your case, for example, we know there's a bit of work there, and unfortunately, you can't fight against gravity. And that's what I explained. For example, if you have the pelvis out of balance, when you stand, naturally gravity will force you to lean towards the short leg, and the same happens when you sit. If your pelvis is off and the lower back is not functional, the chest is not functional, then you will tend to take the positions, the positions, for, the comfort positions based on your imbalances. So it's very frequent beyond the laziness that we find in our modern world, and the tendency to sit all the time or work on or constantly be on our screens and stuff.
The looking down.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. We have a last question here from Mommy Amy. She said her baby is 7 months old. He had a fall off the bed at 6 months old and might have hit his head. How should I ensure that there is no serious injury? Well, I'm sure that the baby is fine now since
yeah, exactly. There is no serious injury from a medical point of view. However, from an osteopathic point of view, there might be some consequences, and the best way is to bring your baby. We have a check. Once again, if you have a doubt, if you have a child which had a fall for any reason, you bring your child, we check. If there's something, we do it. If there's nothing, we send you back home.
Yeah, it's a good idea to get checked. But then one osteo is not everywhere.
But there are many osteopaths around the world, and there are many competent osteopaths, and thankfully we are not the only ones. So you just check in your neighborhood which osteopath is around. You can check their studies, if they are specialized in kids, pregnancy, etc., and you will find plenty of competent people and very, very good osteopaths.
I do agree that there's a lot of competent osteopaths around. Of course, I'm sure they are, okay, because they are trained from good schools, yeah. But if you're in KL, in Klang Valley, KL Selangor, I think you should look no further than One Osteo. Okay, so here is One Osteo official page, facebook.com, One Osteo official page. Please to go over there, give it a like, and book yourself an appointment. And Doc, I have this video here that I would like to show. Like a little bit explanation on what is happening in this video. Give me a moment. I would like to show this video about this baby who has been crying, and each time she sleeps, she can sleep for a maximum of maybe just 30 minutes, and she will wake up and she will cry. We will feed her, but she's never settled, and she doesn't seem to be able to sleep more than 30 minutes at each time. And therefore, I kind of forced the parents. I said, please go and see an osteopath, and she did. She went to One Osteo, and we managed to capture this video. And this is so amazing to me because it's just like in a matter of seconds, the baby stopped crying. What is happening here?
So Basically, when we find kids like this with that kind of behavior, uh, babies, they can't talk. The only way for them to express their discomfort, pain, or whatever you call it, it's through cries. So when they have too much constraints, for example, you take a baby who was born with forceps or vacuum, their head is like compressed. So these babies, in order to release their tensions, they will cry more, because it's like you when you have a headache or a migraine. You just want to scream and bang your head, and you're like, this is a natural mechanism. For babies, how they will react through the cries, it will create a pressure, hyper pressure, which will lead to a release at some point, a mechanical one. And then they calm down. Unfortunately, when the imbalances are too strong, it's just going to last a little bit. And when we work on babies, very frequently, the first session, when there's a lot of work, they would eventually cry at the beginning, because we bring them in their imbalances, we release, and through the cries, they help us to release. Not that they are in pain, it's just that they are so sensitive, they are so intuitive, they feel what's going on, and they release, they cry, and then when we reach that point where all the tissues are released, then the baby falls asleep. And this is what we explain to parents sometimes at the beginning when we treat babies. They would cry a lot, and parents, they tend to be, oh, my baby is in pain. No, he's not in pain, but he's just like expressing the imbalances, the feeling that of what the work we are doing. And once it's released, then it's easy. Second session, balance is off, baby is good. And in that case, for example, babies crying like this for hours at the end of the day, for example, any time of the day, they cry. Parents, they are trying everything they can. They go completely mad because my baby is not calming down. It's because there's something wrong. They have imbalances. Once we release that, done, baby is sleeping and everything's fine.
You are totally right, because after that, the baby was wonderful, able to sleep for at least 2 to 3 hours before the next feeding. Yeah, so that was actually something that I've witnessed myself, and I totally amazed at it. Yeah.
If you have enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe and share it with all your friends. If you would like to sponsor and support my work to help more families, you can do so through Patreon. My Patreon link is as listed in the description below. Thank you so much. Have a great day.